How's it going, everyone? Dylan and I are back. We are recording our second podcast episode of the week because we didn't do one last week. So to even things out, we're doing two this week. In this episode, we're going to talk about the seven head coaching hires, the new head coaching hires in the NFL that happened. Break down our thoughts as to how we interpreted, and we think it's a good, bad hire, things like that. I think it's a pretty relatively good mix of like good. I think there's one bad hire that we'll probably both agree on. Well, bad on paper at least, kind of to be determined, I guess. But yeah. Do you want to start us off, or would you rather have me start?
I don't care. I mean, it's completely up to you. I think, yeah, it's up to you. Whatever you wanted to start out with.
All right. Well, I guess I'll just start with the hire I was just talking about. Brian Schottenheimer. At least on paper, it is kind of just like, what the hell is this hire? I mean, he's in-house. He was the OC, even though Mike McCarthy was the one calling the plays. He's the real offensive coordinator. It just seems like they completely botched their interviews. It looked like it was going to be Kellen Moore. Obviously, he has ties to Dallas. He was there for a couple years as their offensive coordinator, and that was when he actually called the plays. Their offense was pretty good under Kellen Moore, top of the league, pretty well balanced. Um, and yeah, I mean, they botched the situation with Mike McCarthy. Looks like they wanted to bring him back. And then the reports are saying, I think McCarthy wanted a 5-year deal. Jerry Jones only offered him a 3-year deal. So that didn't happen. Just seems like they botched it. They didn't do enough interviews. And so Jerry Jones kind of went with the safe option with Brian Schottenheimer. He has no head coaching experience. And the one thing we know about Dallas and Jerry Jones is Jerry Jones is going to want a head coach that listens to him. Jerry Jones needs to be the one controlling the team. And I don't know much about Brian Schottenheimer, but I think that's probably going to be the case. Is Jerry Jones is going to tell him how to run the team, run the offense, things like that, and Brian Schottenheimer is going to listen. So kind of to be determined higher, in my opinion, but at least on paper, not the best hire, I don't think.
Yeah, it looks like Jerry Jones's little puppet, kind of. You can tell.
Yeah,
Um, you go from a proven commodity with Mike McCarthy, who's been in the league for years, and then you transition to one of the most riskiest plays in probably their program's history for the last 20 years. It's probably a really risky hire. I will say that Schottenheimer actually has his dad was actually a head coach for 21 years with the Browns and the Chiefs. So there's some, family experience with that. Uh, um, but this is one of the most riskiest hires that we've seen from a team that has always been on the cusp of a playoff thing every year. So, I mean, I would say, Schottenheimer, they tried to keep Mike McCarthy, but Schottenheimer was the next man up. And what you said before, they botched their interviews and they were left with very few options. And there you go. And they got Schottenheimer. Now, I don't really know how he is as a person. I don't really know too much about him, but I do know that Um, he's gonna have Dak next year, and he's gonna have some talent. So we'll have to see how he incorporates that talent from the offensive end to help out Dak and make this offense go. On the defensive end, he's probably gonna look probably a little bit less into the defensive end, depending on what Jerry Jones decides to do with that defense. And that's the thing is like Jerry Jones really runs that team and drafts and does all that stuff. So I mean, we're gonna have to see how those two get along.
yeah. A positive view on it, if you're a Cowboys fan, is well, A, it's an in-house hire, and B, we've seen offensive coordinators get hired as head coaches in the past, even though they had the title of OC, but they didn't call the plays. Like in the case of Brian Schottenheimer, like Mike McDaniel, that's probably the most recent one. Obviously, Mike McDaniel, well, actually, he's been getting some heat, but their offense has been successful under Mike McDaniel, at least with Tua, when, the healthy squad is there. So, maybe that's the case with Brian Schottenheimer. Maybe people underestimate him. I mean, he's been there, I think, a while, so obviously he's going to be familiar with the system. It felt like the Dallas offense kind of clicked towards the back half of the year, really after like Dak went out. Not that Dak was the problem, but it feels like their offense like clicked a bit after that. So Schottenheimer was there for that. Um, but yeah, kind of like you said, going from a proven commodity that looked like was going to re-sign, and then they botched the process, and so they kind of just go with Schottenheimer. There's a lot of question marks around him.
Yeah,
So
very much so. Very much
yeah.
so.
Um, Kellen Moore to the Saints. Kind of felt like, as soon as the Mike McCarthy, obviously the botched situation in Dallas when he was, on the free agency market for head coaching, I felt like the Saints, a lot of rumors there. Once his name was out of the running for it, I think everyone kind of assumed Kellen Moore because there was the last, head coach opening. So if he wanted head coaching gigs, obviously the last opportunity he can possibly get. The Eagles' offense is really good this year, obviously. Very unique approach, dead last in the league in passing attempts, which, even though I said Kellen Moore is a balanced OC, he definitely has a tendency to kind of go maybe too pass heavy at times. So, this year kind of proved that he's willing to just stick with the run if it's working, not go too pass heavy. I think it's a good hire because Kellen Moore, obviously, he doesn't have any head coaching experience in the NFL at least. Kind of some questions around him, but I think he's in a better position than Schottenheimer as far as like his resume. The Saints, I don't think are going to be great next year. I don't think they're going to be like one of the worst teams. Like I think they'll probably have a year similar to this year. Probably like 5, 6 win teams, maybe pull off an upset or two, have a close, you know competitive games with some good teams. Um, so the Saints, I don't think, I think internally they know they're not going to be competing for the Super Bowl next year, probably for a couple seasons at least. So let's just go with Kellen Moore, someone unproven because, if he shits the bed, we're not going to be good probably regardless. So I think it's a good hire. I'm surprised Dallas didn't hire him, but I think it's a good hire with the Saints.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that. Kellen Moore has always been on the outside of those head coaching positions. He's always gotten interviews for years. When he was on the Chargers, when he was on the Eagles, when he was on the Cowboys, this guy has always continued to just somehow land head coaching interviews. It just seems like he was always on the outside because he was unproven. He's always, I mean, he's further developed quarterbacks and played to their strengths, whereas, with Jalen Hurts, he's ran the ball. So. I will say that Kellen Moore is he's a very good offense coordinator. So he knows what's going on. He knows how the game management and all that. I think this is a great hire for the Saints. I actually disagree with Kellen Moore actually wanting to go to the Saints. I actually think he could have picked a better place to go. I Kellen Moore is a really good coach, and he's somebody that is on top of like the head coaching market. So maybe in a week head coaching, uh, you know, pool, maybe he decided to kind of take that head coaching job now to maybe get that long-term security. So I kind of like it for the Saints. I think the Saints did a great job with this hire, and I'm very excited to see how they can operate and what kind of quarterback they're going to bring in to fit Kellen Moore's scheme.
Yeah, yeah, I was gonna say that I'm interested to see what they do at quarterback if they're gonna stick with Derek Carr, because I think they'll stick with Derek Carr if I had to guess. 'Cause I'm dying here, Jesus. Um, I think Derek Carr could be a good fit for Kellen Moore. Like you said, he's developed, quarterbacks. You know, uh, Dak, when he was the offensive coordinator, he did a really good job with Dak. Herbert, they sort of have similar place. Well, he was only with the Chargers 1 year, but he did a really good job with Herbert. I mean, when Dallas let him go, I think he took the Chargers gig like literally, I don't even think 24 hours after. So obviously he's a very well liked and respected guy among the league. And then he did a good job with the Eagles this year and Hurts and company too. So, and again, I mentioned earlier, he proved he can kind of go from pass heavy to run heavy. So he's, willing to change his philosophy, his, what he's comfortable with. So I think it's a good hire. Uh, I agree with what you said about, he probably could have just gone back to the Eagles next year and just waited for probably a better opportunity to at least like win in the short term. Because, like I said, I don't think the Saints are going to be great next year. I think their cap space is really gonna. This is going to be the year they've been pushing it and pushing it year in year out. I think they're kind of going to bite the bullet this year, finally embrace that rebuild. But yeah, I think it's a good hire.
Yeah. Another thing about Kellen Moore too is um, if you look at the quarterback development with Dak Prescott, right after he had it, he got a max contract in 2020, right? And then you go and you look at the Chargers gig that he had, Justin Herbert got paid. If you look at, the Jalen Hurts, I mean, he was already paid before that, but he looked good when he got the contract. So, I mean, he consistently has proven to give quarterbacks big contracts. So if you were right, well respected around the league, I think that's 100%. And yeah, I would have to agree with you on that one.
Yeah. Um, Here's another kind of I see back and forth people on this one. Maybe your future employer, hopefully, the Jags hiring Liam Cohen. So I think it's a good hire. We talked about it the podcast we just recorded 2 days ago now. I said how it kind of reminds me, at least like storyline wise, like the Jonathan Gannon hire. I think Liam Cohen it kind of had more momentum because he his last game with the Bucs went better than Jonathan Gannon's last game did with the Eagles. Um, but they kind of seem like very good coaches, good coordinators, but like kind of just interesting people. Like Jonathan Gannon kind of got mocked for like the fire in the gut thing, so that he was getting meme for that. Liam Cohen is intro press conference, he's getting like meme for Duval. So I'm like kind of right off the bat reminds me of Gannon. I think it's a good hire. Liam Cohen did a really good job with the Bucs. I think he's going to do a good job with Trevor Lawrence. I think it's a good hire. Like, it's not like the greatest hire I've ever seen, but a lot of people are kind of shitting on it. I think also because of how he got, well, not how he got the job, but how he left the Bucs, how he took his name out of the running, and then he was going to sign with the Bucs again, and then the whole shit show with, what happened in like a span of 24 hours because of Trent Baalke. Reportedly, you want to go there because of Baalke. They fired Baalke, and then he goes back. So, kind of, you know, controversy there, but I think it's a good hire. I like it.
So I'm going to say this, the Jags got very lucky. And the reason why they got lucky is because everybody was firing their head coaches immediately after the season. Okay. The Jags waited like 2 weeks. I think by the time that Jags decided to fire coaches, I think Ben Johnson already took a job. I think Mike Vrabel already took the job. Pete Carroll was already a head coach for the Raiders. So like while all these guys were getting jobs, the Jags just decided to fire late in the process, right? And the reason why the Bucks fans and people in the Bucks organization were upset with Liam Cohen leaving is because of the timing of that period, right? So Liam Cohen actually took this job late in the process, which upset a lot of people. I think this is a great hire for the Jags. Liam Cohen, you proven commodity, revived Baker Mayfield, and at the end of the day, it looks like he can try to revive Trevor Lawrence. They've already come out and addressed the trade rumors and said that Trevor Lawrence is not for sale at all, no matter what the cost is. So they see something in Trevor Lawrence, and if Liam Cohen has the right opportunity to, make Trevor Lawrence blossom into the quarterback that we've all expected since he was the number one overall pick, I think that's a great hire, and they show a lot of trust in him. Liam Cohen's philosophy is very well. It's good culture. It's a good set and a great foundation to start from. Now the problem is is Trevor Lawrence needs to continue to develop and play to Liam Cohen needs to play to his strengths, and he needs to live up to that contract because he got paid already. So he already got paid, and he needs to live up to the contract. And Liam Cohen, they better believe in him because this guy, to keep continuity, to keep the Jaguars into a to enter into a good position later in the career of Trevor Lawrence, it's a must. So I'll give this hire probably like I'll give it like a B plus A minus just because of the timing. The Jaguars organization as a whole uh, did this really late, and I kind of disagree with that. But they got a good candidate out of it, so it worked out for the better for them. And yeah, I'll agree with that.
Yeah, the Jags definitely did things later than I think a lot of people were anticipating. Even during the season, I thought Doug Peterson was gone after that Lions game because like going into that game, there were reports saying that if they got blown out, like they were probably making coaching change and they lost, I think 55-6. I'm like, well, you can't get blown out much worse than that. And they kept Peterson the rest of the season. But yeah, Ben Johnson was rumored for this job too. Obviously, he went to the Bears. I think he probably would have been better than Cohen, but I still think Cohen's a really good hire, especially late in the process, like you were talking about. So I think it's a good hire.
Yeah. They also fired their GM and their coach at the same time.
Yeah,
So it was like they cleaned house really late. So I was like,
yeah,
oh my gosh. And right now, I think they're still looking for a general manager, if I haven't mistaken. So again, that's really late for them, but they're lucky to have Liam Cohen. So now um, there's a little bit dysfunction with that. Like I'm more of a fan of how you hire the general manager and then the general manager hires the coaching staff. I'm more on board with that kind of philosophy. A lot of other organizations are a little bit different. Um, More of like, oh, I want the owner to select this and the owners to select this and this guy and this guy. I'm more of like the philosophy of the general manager selects their coaching staff, the coaching staff selects their offensive defensive coordinator. So I like how it like trickles down. That's my kind of philosophy, but a lot of owners like to take matters into their own hands and determine that as well. um, i I love the Liam Cohen signing, but now you have to find a general manager that meshes well with him and has continuity with him, which is kind of hard to do late in this process.
yeah,
So we'll
yeah,
see how the Jags work it out. And we'll see how they draft too, because that's going to be another interesting um, take on that, especially this late into the draft process, because people are going to be making their selections very soon.
yeah. That's definitely going to be something to watch out for. Um, I think this is interesting hire. People are kind of back and forth in this one. Aaron Glenn to the Jets. I A lot of people are down on it because kind of like Jonathan Gannon, Aaron Glenn's last game with the Lions obviously was a disaster. They just got absolutely torched by Jane Daniels and company. Now, in his defense, his defense was beat to hell, like beyond belief. Because when they were healthy, they were like one of the top defenses in the league, like very quietly. Um, but I think I like the hire too. Uh, I like Aaron Glenn's personality, and one thing I like about Aaron Glenn is obviously Aaron Glenn's a defensive guy. So a lot of head coaches like like William Cohen, like Schottenheimer, Moore, they're probably going to be running the offense because they're offensive guys. So you figured, oh, Aaron Glenn maybe is just going to run the defense. He said he's not going to call the defense. He's wants to be the head coach, help everywhere. So I like that right off the bat. I think his personality, his coaching style, kind of the hard nosed, like, aggressive coach, I think that's really good for the Jets. I think they probably need that after their disaster of a season. He just brought in Steve Wilks. Steve Wilks kind of similar to Aaron Glenn, like personality wise, I think. I like that hire to call the defense, which I don't even think Steve Wilks should have been fired in the first place from the 49ers, probably, or the Panthers the year prior. Um, so yeah, I really like the Aaron Glenn hire. How the Jets will do, I don't know, but I like the hire.
Yeah, I think the hire was good. It's good, but I don't know what they plan on doing with Aaron Rodgers. Usually, if you have a new quarterback coming in that is, new to this, new to things, or if like they're younger, you kind of want like an offensive minded head coach. That's why you see a lot of these offensive minded head coaches take these positions. Um, so if you have that kind of relationship with your head coach and your quarterback, then it kind of like mixes with them. But I will say that Aaron Glenn, I mean, he's good. He was a good defensive coordinator for the Lions. So I think he could take the Jets to the next level. And if that's something that they need, then this is a great hire. And um, I mean, the Jets have a great defense. So we'll have to see how Aaron Glenn takes that to the next level, along with his new hire, and we'll see how that offense looks because that's been a it's been a tragedy recently in the last
Yeah,
two.
yeah. The defense was not the problem last year for sure. It was obviously the offense, and their defense, had a stretch, had a couple games where it looked bad. But even when they fired Robert Saleh, I think they were like the third overall defense, and it took their defense took a dip once Saleh was fired, but it was still pretty solid. Um, yeah, like Aaron Glenn said, obviously he's going to help with the defense, but he's there for the offense, special teams, everything else too. But yeah, what they'll do at quarterback, I think that's going to be interesting. Letting Rodgers walk. Um, but I like the hire. Um, Pete Carroll to the Raiders, kind of another one getting some debate. I I like the hire. I feel like with Pete Carroll, I think I said it in our video the other day, you're at least going to be like a competitive team, like fighting for the playoffs, like the last week of the season. I feel like with Pete Carroll, the Raiders are obviously a disaster this year. They're kind of like middle of the road as far as like talent, like roster wise on paper. I think Pete Carroll knows how to get the best out of his players. Like obviously super energetic guy, even though he's in like his mid 70s. Uh, like a player's coach. I think the Raiders, I don't think they'll, be competing for the Super Bowl next year, especially we don't even know who their quarterback's going to be. But I think the Raiders will be much improved next year. Maybe a sleeper team, but I think the Raiders could make some noise. I like the hire. The only thing is Pete Carroll, like I said, he's in his mid 70s, and it seems like the Raiders are, you know, kind of stuck being like not bad to the point where they'll be picking, in the top three, but not like, good enough either where they'll certainly be contending for a championship. Not even like they'll be in the middle of the pack. Like they're stuck like, I don't know, like 6 to 10 range, it feels like. So you're obviously going to want a head coach for a long time. And how long is Pete Carroll going to coach for? That's kind of a question. So that's the downside, but I like the hire.
So I hate the hire because of that reason. That reason right there. He's in his mid 70s. This is a short-term hire for a team that's not a short-term team. So if you look at what the Raiders have right now, I think they're at six right now with their selection in the draft, or if they're like eight, six or eight, between there. But
Yeah.
anyway, they have to trade up to um, get a quarterback, right? Which is giving up future assets if they were to do that. Now, do they hire like a free agent quarterback? I don't agree with this hire. I don't I don't agree with it if it's for like long-term reasons because they're probably gonna have to find a new head coach in the next 2 years. Like they'll probably have to, you know, take Pete Carroll, probably fire him in the next 2, 3 years, depending on how the team does. And it's just constant turnover with that organization. And it's a huge problem. And I think that starts with the owners. The owner has a huge problem. I think it's Davis. I think it's Davis, the owner.
Yeah.
Uh,
Mark Davis
what
with
just
his haircut.
I don't like this hire at all. And it's not because of Pete Carroll. It's not because of his talent and what he's done in the past. I think he's, a proven guy and he's been really good throughout his entire career, Super Bowl winner. But I think that it's a huge problem when he's in his mid 70s and you're trying to completely revamp this team into a team that wants to win 6 games and next year, like we said.
Yeah.
I think you have to look somewhere else for a younger, maybe not proven guy yet, maybe if you want to take a risk. I think the Raiders were a great team to take a risk at like a offensive coordinator.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean that's just how it is. I don't like it, but Pete Carroll's a great head coach, so we'll see if they improve next year.
Yeah, that's a really good way to look at it. I think short term, it's a good hire considering where the Raiders are at, like talent wise, draft wise, things like that. But long term, definitely, it's not a good hire. And again, not due to Pete Carroll, like you were just talking about, just simply due to his age. Like how much longer is he going to coach for? And you mentioned turnover is always a problem with the Raiders. Obviously, there's going to be turnover. You have to imagine at least like in a few years at Pete Carroll. So that's definitely an issue there. So I guess it depends how you look at it. Short term, I think it's a good hire, but long term definitely brings in a lot of questions. Um, Here's Ben Johnson was ready to go to the rumored to go to the Raiders. He obviously went to the Bears. I think that's pretty much a home run hire. Ben Johnson was the name everyone was talking about. I think that's exactly what Caleb Williams needed. Obviously, an offensive guy, Ben Johnson. I think that's exactly what the Bears, Caleb Williams needed. I think it's a home run hire.
Yep, it's a match made in heaven. I mean, it really is a match made in heaven. You have a quarterback who had his offensive coordinator fired in the first year and just a complete locker room dispute. The next year, like this upcoming year, Ben Johnson, who led the Lions into a really good position last year, now can lead the Bears into a great position. Head coach, I love this head coaching hire. Ben Johnson, he was the top prospect of the head coaching gigs this year. And it wasn't even close. It was Ben Johnson and then everybody else, right? So Ben Johnson solidified himself as the top head coaching candidate, landed it with the Bears. Caleb Williams gets to see what a real offense gets to look like in the next 2, 3 years, maybe more. I mean, this this would get Bears fans pumped up about the next couple years because the future is bright because now you have your franchise quarterback. Your future is bright because now you just landed one of the best offensive coaches on the market. You have great weapons that can pair up with Caleb Williams. I have another one with O'Doomsday, who's really young. The only thing you need to do, and it's been the same thing for the last couple of years, is that offensive line. Fields had a problem with it. Caleb Williams really had a problem with it last year. If the Patriots and the Bears, I mean, they had the same exact problem last year. It was that offensive line, and the only thing they need to do, Ryan Poles, Ben Johnson, they need to get together and come up with a offensive line that they feel confident in putting Caleb Williams back there because we've seen Caleb Williams take a lot of hits. We've seen him hold the ball too long because he's trying to juke and try to get away from defenders. And he's looking down the field. I love this pick. You're going to see a lot of money, free agent money, going right into the laps of the Bears because of that Ben Johnson, Caleb Williams. I think we're going to see another like big hype thing like we did with last year with Jaden Daniels and that Cliff Kingsbury offense. I think we're going to see a huge jump with Ben Johnson and the Bears next season. I'm expecting the Bears to win 10 games next year. I think that's depending on how they do within the free agency and the draft. I expect 10 wins in that NFC North division.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. I, Obviously, you just talked about the offensive line. Obviously, well, one of many issues to the Bears. I think the main issue this past season was their offensive line. Um, yeah, I think they'll be investing a lot of money into that because, weapons wise, even if they lose Keenan Allen to free agency, let him walk, they still get more. They got Cole Kmet, they got Swift, Dunze, obviously. So, I mean, they're a pretty stacked offense, honestly. Caleb Williams, even though the coaching offensively, I think, was terrible for the most part last year, he still showed a lot of bright spots, showed a lot of promise. When they fired Shane Waldron, the offense was a lot better. Caleb Williams looked a lot better. Just the offensive line was obviously an issue. Caleb Williams was sacked and pressured like a historic amount of times. Ben Johnson, I certainly think is going to get the most out of him. And the thing is, even if, the Bears are god awful and like, they completely shit the bed next season, it's still, I don't even think it's a bad hire because nothing suggests that's going to happen versus like the Matt Eberflus hire. It was kind of like when he got hired, like, okay, like we can't really judge the hire because he kind of just came out of nowhere. So it's easier to judge that versus Ben Johnson. There's just a lot of promise and not much risk. I think it's a knock out of the park hire.
Yeah, and Ben Johnson also, I'm excited to see what he's going to do with the creativity because last year we've seen the Lions lateral and
Yeah.
incorporate that into their offense, and a lot of people put it on Dan Campbell last year. So I'm pretty interested to see if he incorporates that misdirection, lateral playbook, and I'm excited to see if he can continue with that creativity because there's a lot of good talent on that team with Odunze, Swift, like you were saying, DJ Moore. So I'm excited to see if they can incorporate some of that lateral movement, push up field kind of style. So I'm pretty excited. Um, I'm really, I don't know. I think this is a 10 out of 10 A plus hiring for the Bears for an organization that has been atrocious for the last 20 years. I mean, this team can really take off. I wouldn't
Yeah.
doubt it. I doubt it. I really do think next year they're going to contend for a top NFC spot. And it could be the division. I think they could easily win that division next year. Which is insane to say, but I don't know. I think they can go from one of the worst teams in that division to the first.
Yeah. I definitely think the Bears are have uh not spoiler, but the hell's the phrase for it? I just think they can be really good next year, like you were just talking about. I mean, this year, I think a good amount of people expected them to be good, and they were on pace to. And then that Hail Mary just completely derailed their season, just a complete disaster after that. But yeah, excellent hire. That's the one everyone wanted, Ben Johnson, and the Bears ended up landing him. I also think my team had an excellent hire, the perfect hire with Mike Vrabel. Now, like if we were to rank, all these head coaching hires like 1 to 7, I think at worst Mike Vrabel, people would rank him as like 2, and Ben Johnson is 1, but I think they're interchangeable. It's kind of like 1A, 1B. I just think Mike Vrabel is exactly what we needed. Kind of gets the best out of, everyone, even though talent-wise might not be the best. We saw with Tennessee, maybe not the best rosters. They kind of overachieved. Um, Very good regular season teams. Postseason, he came up a bit short besides his first year, or his first time in the playoffs. Obviously, went to the conference championship game, of course, against the Chiefs. God help us. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, obviously, he has ties to us, played for us, won Super Bowls with us, very close to the Kraft family. His coaching style, I just think is perfect. He's not going to let players get away with stuff. I think that was a problem for us last year was coaching. Mayo to me just seemed like too much of a player's coach, like too much of a friendly guy. Like if someone messes up, he's not going to, you know, rip into him or something like that. Not that you need to, but it works a lot of the time. Uh, Mike Vrabel, his players talked about, if you mess up, he's certainly going to let you know about it, and that issue is getting corrected. So I think Mike Vrabel, perfect hire. Love the hire.
I would actually agree with you. I think Mike Vrabel was one of the top head coaching candidates out there as well. And the thing is he gives like that no bullshit persona of like, all right, this is how it's gonna be. And if you're gonna, slack off, if you're gonna, Baker, if you're gonna go into the media and say you have the best hands, or Polk, if you're gonna go into the media and post this, yeah, there's no bullshit here. You have a clean slate right now, but he gives like that like vibe off. And you know, from a organization that had Belichick for years to, kind of put that like media out there to rest, it seems like he's doing a great job of just keeping the players content with, keeping everything in house and not out into the media where, big things in a big market can explode with, just the littlest of lines. So I like how Vrabel, I mean, has coached in the past with the Titans. The Titans are not, with Tannehill, and they were not the best team. They were not like that good of a team. He took them and he did what he could with that team. And from now on, I would expect nothing less. Mike Vrabel's a great coach, and I'm excited to really see what he does with Drake May and how he could progress him. And yeah, I mean, uh, Josh Josh Daniels now is the offensive coordinator, so he hired him. Mike Vrabel liked him enough to bring him back. So we'll have to see. There's a lot of pressure on Josh Daniels this year with a top three pick in last year's draft. I think it's now his turn to show why he could develop a future possible franchise quarterback. So Mike Vrabel, a a hire, I would say a hire. Um, and yeah, I don't I think it's pretty much set in stone with that.
Yeah, no bullshit is a good way to put how he coaches his coaching philosophy. And we were supposed to, well, not supposed to get Vrabel, but everyone thought we were going to get Vrabel when we let Belichick go, or well, mutually agreed to part ways. Um,
Mhm.
Basically, just push him out the door, probably.
Yeah, yeah.
But we wanted Vrabel. Reports are saying we wanted Vrabel, but it was in Mayo's contract, and we crap promised him that he was the guy once Bill left. So that's why we hired Mayo over him. And like you were saying with Liam Cohen, we got, I think, pretty lucky to get Vrabel because I don't know how he was not a head coach this past season. Especially, some of the coaches that got fired. It's like, are they really a better coach than Mike Vrabel? Some of them probably not. So we got pretty lucky with this hire. Kind of a year too late, I think, but we got Mike Vrabel anyway. I'm super optimistic about my team next year. I think we're going to be good. I love the hire.
Yeah, another thing is too is Vrabel was doing a lot of these head coaching jobs with the Titans and putting up wins not too long ago, probably like 5, 6 years ago. I mean, even more recently, like 2 or 3 years ago, right? And when you have a young team and they see a coach that is already a proven coach, they're gonna buy into that culture a little bit more than a new guy would. If a new guy comes in, they're like, "Oh, he's an offensive coordinator from here. We'll see how he does." I think more players are gonna buy into a solidified head coach who's had experience taking a team to the playoffs, taking a team far into the postseason. So I think there's a great hire, and I think um, Patriot players are going to buy into Vrabel, and I think we're going to see a huge jump in progression from the New England Patriots in a division that was a little bit overrated last year, you could say. Um, so I think this year, I think if the Patriots spend the money right, if they draft well, like they did last year, they need, or besides wide receiver position, they need to solidify that, you know, next generation of hope that, was just taken away with the Brady, with Brady leaving. So I'm excited
Yes.
to see. I'm really excited. I think that's really good. Hire.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a big if we spend the money correctly, because we don't spend any money, and the money we do is usually like not great contract, not in terms of value, but the guys we sign. But yeah, less than a minute here. Try to wrap it up quickly. I think all the head coaches are pretty good hires, except if you look long term, Pete Carroll, you kind of talked about it, kind of question marks there. But I think pretty much all the hires, well, Schottenheimer, that's kind of another question mark. But I think all of them are pretty good. I don't think any of them, at least like as of now on paper leading up to the season, are like, oh my God, like complete failure. Yeah, I think it was pretty good head coaching hire cycle.
Yeah, I agree.
Yep. Just waiting for us to
Yep.
get cut off here. It's been on less than 1 minute for like 2 minutes,
I
I
know.
feel like.
Any second. Any second.